So the news is apparently out that, in a way, Relatable Reese and Tommy Scoville of the Lie Boat, as I mockingly call it, though now apparently it's Love Boat. We'll wait and see if that's official, but apparently now the lifeboat is Love Boat. Okay, there's obviously the more weird, spicy stuff. Got to be honest, that probably gets more views, more money, more clicks. But I do think it's important to try to really disentangle what exactly are we talking about. So essentially, Scoville and Marilyn Honig are fighting a word war about how to label him. So I will be the most generous, trying to not add more confusion, which I get accused of. And I guess what he could be labeled as is sodomy, so a sodomist. Why, and why not use more provocative terms? Okay, so this is the way I understand it. Again, I don't trust Scoville. I want to be very clear here. However, he does present a persuasive case. So what exactly is he saying, and what is he not saying? Well, the way I understood it, it's basically like this. So we assume that the witness, right, the victim, the young female victim, can be trusted. The way he's explaining it, he was caught in a no-win situation, namely that it could have been consensual sex, right? Well, then you think, why would you be charged and convicted? And he says, the laws were just built that way. Today's laws, yes, they'll take account of, well, is this a boyfriend-girlfriend thing? But back then, the way he is arguing it, it's just automatic. In other words, if you have some relationship, even if it's two teenagers, you will be charged with a criminal activity. So he had a choice. Does he plead that he's guilty of assault or he's guilty of statutory? Either way, he's going to go to jail. But statutory, it has a much higher punishment. Okay, so why should we believe him? Well, he brings two questionable pieces of evidence to bear. Namely, one, he was tested. Apparently, there's a kind of weird test that they run on, well, technically they can run on women, but men are subjected to this kind of weird test to try to gauge how, I guess, in control of their body they are. They're shown shocking images, and apparently he passed the test. So, to the Vermont authorities, he's not a dangerous criminal to the point he has to be registered. And he explains that too, saying, no, the register is retroactive. So if he fit the label, he would be registered, but he's not. Again, this could be a screw up, maybe not. But let's get to the main thing, which I think is troubling. And again, to this point, we don't know. So he says at the time of his arrest, he did have some counter evidence. But due to how the law works, right, victims are granted anonymity and they're also granted some special rights. So because of the shield laws, certain statements by other witnesses, which apparently attest to that this young girl was more sexually active and her story just doesn't quite add up. But those statements questioning the validity of her testimony were not admitted. He couldn't use them. They existed, but he couldn't use them, so he was kind of stuck. So there was strong counter evidence to clear his name, but his lawyer and his family made a decision saying, well, just plead guilty, serve your time. You're not even going to be on a register. Whatever, just do your time, get out, and, it is what it is. Again, good or bad, that is a very believable story because that is how it works, right? Prosecutors will take innocent people and say, well, whether you're innocent or not is irrelevant. We're going to offer you a fairly good deal. If you fight the deal, you could end up with a really harsh sentence. And there you are. Now, you could be proven innocent, but that's a risk. So would you rather risk a few years in jail, guaranteed, then you get out, or you fight the case, you're still going to be found guilty, and you serve all this time? Well, there we are. So that's the way he's framing it, that it was totally consensual. The witness is lying, right? And also Marilyn got key things wrong. So let's just bring Marilyn Honig back in. So I think it's fair to say that Marilyn was not very rigorous with her investigation. She just assumed he's guilty and built a narrative where he just is guilty and provided all these shocking details to suggest, oh, well, definitely he's guilty. But we're going in a circle, basically. In other words, can we believe the witness? At this point, we just don't know. We really don't know. Now, if he does have these pieces of counter evidence, presumably, hopefully, that will come out in the civil trial. And he can presumably read that into the public record saying, no, there's other statements by other people to show it's not what it appears to be. Now, obviously, at this point, giving his conning and grifting and lying in other cases, I'm a little skeptical here, right? I'm a little skeptical he's talking about this now. But again, we do have that dilemma because I've done a few videos exposing other predators, sometimes, again, intentional, like EFAP, but sometimes by accident. Like this one case, this black guy, basically in that case, it seemed clear-cut. Now, in his case, he was much older than the victim. So again, it just seems to be, we're going in a circle with two things. One is that in Vermont, the age is very critical. Whether you believe me or not, it is critical. You can look up the statutes yourself. He cites the statutes very explicitly to disprove what Marilyn is saying, so I'm kind of stuck. Again, I'm not from Vermont, so it just seems there's a very specific culture in Vermont, how they're treating this issue, and Marilyn's just not a good reporter or a good journalist, so I don't really trust her. Still, parts of the story she said do line up that, okay, whether it's consensual or not, something did happen on that critical day, and he did confirm that there was some kind of intercourse through a phone conversation. Okay, so there's really no doubt some kind of relationship happened. The question then turns to, was it coercive or not? He says, no, it's not coercive. This girl, for whatever reason, wanted to get revenge, changed her mind, and he was charged with statutory, even though to him it was totally consensual. So we're sort of stuck because, again, if you listen to Marilyn carefully, she is just reading back allegations. So we're stuck. The question is he guilty? What's the evidence? And we just keep going back to the witness is telling the truth, but we don't know if she is telling the truth. And if there are these counter statements, like other witnesses and other reports, we're kind of stuck, right? So at this point, let's be patient. Let's just calm down. If he can present this evidence, okay, that's impressive, but parts of the story are ringing true. I looked up this test. This test is a real thing, so there you go. Now, that's not to say he's innocent. It could be he fooled the test. He's fooled a lot of people. So two things can be true, that maybe the witness is not telling the whole truth, but he's not totally guilty, maybe somewhere in between. So it's a lot of possibilities here. That said, if he wanted to clear his name, you'd think, given his resources, because sometimes he does have money, he'd have done this earlier. So I don't know. I'm still very suspicious. That said, Marilyn is very, very sloppy. And parts of the story she told were not true. I think she just got lazy. I don't think she was lying. But other parts, yeah, she's just lying. She's not being very rigorous with the dates or the timeline or the ages, and sometimes slipped up and made it seem as if he was 19 and the victim was much younger. No, both the victim was very, very young, but so was he. So, it's just a very tricky case. However, I am suspicious of what he and Reese are up to. It could be this is another gaslighting campaign, and they're taking bits and pieces from the case to distort things to make him look a lot more innocent than he really is. At this point, I don't know. But I've wondered about this. Like, why would he be doing this unless he does have an ace in the hole? He has something he could bring forward in the civil case to really devastate Marilyn. Again, it could be he's bluffing. It could be he is bluffing. But if he does have counter evidence, then yeah, I think Marilyn is not just in trouble, but it will probably reframe the debate. So we'll have to wait and see. But at this point, Marilyn is suspiciously just repeating herself, but not offering much more than what he's just guilty by assertion. So yeah, it's very, very tricky. But we'll get into the more spicy reunion, I guess, of Relatable Reese and Scoville. But I just wanted to do this more serious video to get this out of the way that, yeah, there apparently is counter evidence out there. Okay, we'll have to wait and see if he can actually deliver that counter evidence, and then we'll examine it, and we'll see what goes next. Thank you for listening.